And welcome back to Real Side Radio. Dave Sussman here, joining you across the fruited plain on 60 stations on the GCN and Salem Radio Network. Everybody, you want to turn this one up. This is going to be a fantastic interview. A gentleman that we've had on before, and he is a co-founder of the Jewish Republican Alliance. His name is Mitch Silberman, and he is a super nice guy. Welcome, Mitch. How are you?
I'm doing great, Dave. So glad to be here on your show again.
It's always a pleasure to have you because, you know, our heads have been so focused on American politics. And, you know, there's just only so much news that the news media really want to report, especially the cable news stations. And there was not more than just a bare blip regarding the Israeli election that just took place earlier this week. Benjamin Netanyahu, he won, but he is now apparently 2 to 3 seats short of the majority that he needs to control the Knesset. As you heard me in the preamble, it looked like a lot of Arabs had showed up to vote, the biggest number since 1999. What are you looking at from the perspective of what just happened in Israel and the impact that it will have on our relationships with America and Israel?
I think that no matter who is in charge, the United States will stand with Israel. They're our natural ally in the Middle East. You're correct. Netanyahu's short. I think he got 58 of the 61 required seats that he needs. But, they're playing tricks on him like they're trying to do here in the States. I'm sure you know the latest, Dave, where they're trying to pass a resolution or a law that you can't serve if you're under indictment, which is a clear blow to try another way by any means necessary to stop Netanyahu from, taking over and winning and putting together a coalition that he needs to govern properly.
Yeah, but you can indict a ham sandwich if the judge is in your pocket.
Exactly.
So,
yes. Well, that's what they try to do with President Trump, and unfortunately the left is the left is the left, whether it be here in the United States or in Israel. We often joke here that in the United States, conservatives stop voting on election day, and Democrats stop voting once they win. Mm-hmm. So there's tricks they do over there too, which is, well, wait a minute, I know Netanyahu won, but hey, if we indict him and we pass a law that he can't serve while being indicted, then hey, there you go. There's another way to do an end around and stop him from forming that coalition government.
One of the things that I am concerned about is, as a democracy, and I appreciate democracies as opposed to what we see coming from the left in many instances today, not just here in the United States, but across the world. But when you have a democracy, you allow basically any sector of people to vote. And in the Middle East, where there's so much hatred for Israel, and specifically for the Jews, that you have an Arab contingent. I think is it called the Joint List? Is that their political
Yeah,
group?
The Joint List, that's it.
Yeah, the Joint List.
Yep.
So this Joint List is essentially focused on Arab interests. And again, we just saw the largest number of Arabs voting in an Israeli election going against not just Netanyahu, the conservative, but the moderate Bibi Gantz, the blue and white party. Yeah. And so what does that look like? Does that put Israel on a trajectory to essentially weakening herself from within?
Yeah, it's a little hard because, as you know, Dave, and I'm sure your audience is well aware, Arabs in Israel have more freedom than they do in Muslim lands. And there's a reason why there's so many of them flocking to Israel. They have it pretty good there. But if I recall, Netanyahu has said always he will never form a coalition with any group or a voting bloc that is anti-Israel or pro-BDS. And I think that's kind of the fear because the population is growing rapidly, and at some point it might be a demographic time bomb where Israel says, now what do we do? Because they're populating faster than we are, but they live here, and it's a very tough situation.
You know, listen, I'm a Zionist. I'm a Jew. I support Israel. I said at the beginning, my son is going this summer. He's doing Birthright, and
mine too.
Oh,
yep.
We'll have to talk offline because we'll figure out if they're going at the same time. So the quotient for me is to protect Israel under any circumstances, because without Israel, the Middle East is gone. It's done. Mm-hmm. We are facing we're facing an existential threat right now with Iran. They are focused, obviously, internally. They've got an insurgency within their own. 65% of the Iranian citizens are under the age of 35 to 40, and they want to get rid of the mullahs. They want to get rid of the ayatollahs, and they're freedom-loving people. They love stuff. They love materialism. They love American goods and movies, right?
Yes.
And so
Yes.
when we take a look at what is happening right now with this thrust of Arabs voting in Israel, I take a look at that from a standpoint of how California is treating illegal aliens. And I'm not comparing Arabs in Israel to illegal aliens in California, but I'm talking about an insurgency from within that we can see what's happened to California over the past 40 years.
Right. Yeah, it's a very difficult situation. And you're right. California is particularly pernicious because in some ways they're giving more rights to those who have snuck into the country without honoring our laws than those that actually live here. But in Israel, if you're an Israeli citizen and you can vote and you're actually voting to undermine the country you're living in, you're right, Dave. That is a very cautious situation, and we have to always defend Israel, even if they're right and even if they're wrong. And then no country in the history of the world is always correct. But Israel is a beacon of hope and freedom in that area that does not exist anywhere else. And something else, too, Hitler worked so hard to round up 6 million Jews to exterminate them. And now, right next door to Iran, are 6 million Jews plus living right there. They didn't have to round them up. They're all there. And that's a very scary situation. So defense of Israel from internal and external forces has got to be paramount to anyone who loves Israel.
It really is. We got Mitch Silberman here with the Jewish Republican Alliance, a co-founder. Tell us, you got a big event coming up at JRA. Tell us where people can find out about that.
Yeah, it's very exciting. 1 week from tonight, we have the one and only Candace Owens. She is the founder of the Blexit movement, which is a great phrase, the Black exit from the Democratic Party. So if you're in the Southland, it's going to be Wednesday night, March 11th, 7 p.m. at the Warner Center Marriott. There will be no ticket sales at the door. We are almost sold out. We just can announce hot off the press that none other than the great Eldersky, the sage from South Central, Larry Elder, will be introducing Candace next Wednesday night at our event, the Jewish Republican Alliance.
That's fantastic. And everybody could find you again where? JewishRepublicanAlliance.org?
.org, yes, it's JewishRepublicanAlliance.org.
Okay.
We're also at Twitter, Jew Rep Alliance, and same with Instagram, Jew Rep Alliance, and there's a Facebook page, Jewish Republican Alliance.
Great. Will you stick with me through the break? I'd love to get your impressions about what we're seeing here in the United States with our current elections and this leftward thrust towards anti-Semitism that we're seeing by the squad and all of them. So, yeah, absolutely.
Would love to. I'll be here.
Fantastic. And, folks, listen, I got to tell you right now, it's organizations like Mitch's, the Jewish Republican Alliance. It brings people together. And if you've got the time, my biggest problem is time. I'd be at every event. But if you've got the time, you're going to go. I think you had Alan Dershowitz. You've had Ben Shapiro. It's a great organization, and everybody should check you guys out at JewishRepublicanAlliance.org. We'll be right back. Dave Sussman here at Real Side Radio after the commercial break. Don't go away, folks. And delighted to be joined here with Mitch Silberman, who is with the Jewish Republican Alliance. Here's one of the things that's really deeply concerning to me, and tell me if I should be concerned, or maybe I'm overly concerned, or maybe I'm not concerned enough, Mitch. And that is that this growing number of youngsters that seem to be feeling the burn, whether you want to call them Bernie Bros or whatever it is, and you take a look at who is supporting this guy, and you got Linda Sarsour, and you got Rashid Tlaib, and Ilhan Omar. What are we saying to our kids about Israel, those kids particularly that are supporting their mindset?
Unfortunately, it's something called intersectionality, which is many of the people on the left realize that we may not agree on everything, but we all agree we don't like Israel. And for many Jews, they've given up Judaism for leftism. And they haven't been taught how wonderful, frankly, what a miracle Israel is. So, yeah, they're feeling the burn. Unfortunately, they've been indoctrinated about the wonders of socialism. And here's Bernie. He's a passionate guy, and he espouses how great it is. And the fact that he, kowtows with anti-Semites, open anti-Semites, is probably of little to no concern to a lot of these people because they have not been taught about the wonders of Israel anyway. So it's probably not that big of a deal to them, which is most unfortunate.
I take a look at this and I see the BDS movement, and I take a look at what Israel is actually doing for the world. And in my preamble before bringing you on, I talked about the fact that they're literally on the verge of a breakthrough on cancer. I'm sure you've seen the same reports. I've been sharing them out at Whiskey Politics. They're a couple, 3 weeks away from saying that they've got a vaccine for coronavirus. And although that's going to have to go through first and secondary stages, it's not going to be applied to humans right now. They're the first. They're going to be the first for coronavirus. What is it about Israel that is such a threat? Because I take a look at it. You and I both have been to Israel. We know that Arabs work in Israel. We were just talking about the number of Arabs that vote. They can't vote for somebody in Iran, it's Saudi Arabia, right?
Yeah.
So what's the disconnect, do you think?
Unfortunately, Israel has had very bad PR. And I think that they realize that to them it's so obvious how good they are, and unfortunately it is not obvious. I mean, to one of your points earlier, you just reminded me, Dave, you compare Iran to Israel. Iran, as you know, they throw gay people off tops of buildings, kill them, jail them. Israel, they have gay pride parades. What does that tell you about the difference of the cultures? And you're right, if cancer is going to be cured, it's probably going to be a Jewish scientist that comes up with it, or an entrepreneur. Because they were left in the middle of the desert with nothing, they turned a desert into really a paradise there, and they've had to force to be very innovative and creative, and they've come up with so much technology. So all these people that are in support of BDS, well, let's take away some of these inventions that are saving your life or your loved one's life or making your life so easy. All of a sudden they wouldn't want to boycott Israel if they realized what it would cost them in their daily lives.
And yet you say that it may be a PR issue, and I agree with that, and everything today is about messaging. But this seeming hatred, and they don't want to be called anti-Semites, but they will call themselves anti-Zionists. We don't hate the Jewish people. We just don't like the right-wing government. But the fact is that if they laid down, if Bibi Netanyahu wasn't a strong political leader as he is to defend Israel, if they laid down, Hamas, Hezbollah, and the other Iranian proxies would run roughshod over the Israeli people. They would take it over in a heartbeat, and it would be done. You'd be finished. It would be basically a parking lot. What do people in America what don't they understand about that?
They really don't understand it at all, David. It's very unfortunate. They think everyone's nice and the poor Palestinians are being bullied by the big, mean, strong Israelis, and they don't understand. I mean, to your point, the old joke is if the Palestinians lay down their weapons, there'd be no more war. If the Israelis lay down their weapons, there'd be no more Israel. And
exactly.
It's a hatred. No one is born hating Jews. They are taught it. Their version of Sesame Street is the worst kind of anti-Semitism. It's just completely awful. And the outside world doesn't understand that Israel is, of course, not perfect, but they have to be vigilant 24/7 because they are surrounded by 1 billion-plus people who publicly say we want them dead.
Yeah, it really is.
And that's like saying I have nothing against Italians. I just don't think Italy should exist. Italy should be wiped off the map, but no offense to Italians.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The one country in the world that's been targeted for extinction, but we have nothing against those people.
And that's what really scares me. And listen, I have no ill will towards anybody, any ethnic group, the Palestinian people. I'm sure they want exactly the same things as the Jewish people, and that is to raise their children in peace. But unfortunately, they're run by Hamas, again, an Iranian proxy, that is poisoning, as you just talk about, poisoning the minds of the youth, that the second that they can speak, they can speak their language. And it's about the fact that the Jews are trying to kill you, and you have to take down the Jews, and we've got to take back at Jerusalem. This is what the kids are learning. How do you answer that? How do you balance that and still remain a peaceful society?
Well, isn't that the $1 million question, Dave?
I know. I'm just throwing it out. We've been working on it for thousands of years.
So I would agree with most of your statement. If there's 1.5 billion Muslims in the world, let's take a guess that 90% of them are like you and me, okay? That they just want to have good families, good jobs, and a good life. 90% is a great number. Unfortunately, that 10% represents, 150 million people.
Yeah.
And remember, too, in Nazi Germany, not all Germans were Nazis. What was that percent, Dave? I don't know, 5%, 10% were Nazis? Look how that turned out. So they have to have their own civil war within their religion to come to terms with modernity. And until that happens, and that's not easy. I mean, it's one thing for you and I to speak up against our country or our leaders, but we're not afraid of being beheaded or thrown in jail for doing that like they are in those countries.
Oh, that's so true. It's so true. And it's shockingly sad how you and I could have had this discussion in 1999 and in 1979. And I mean, it just doesn't change. And meanwhile, I find it more than frustrating. We've only got 2 minutes left on this, unfortunately. I find it more than frustrating that so many American Jews do not see wood for the trees, and they continually support those people like Bernie Sanders and many on the left that basically would lead to the ruination of Israel.
Yep. It's a conundrum because they're born Jewish, but as I mentioned earlier, and I really mean this very seriously, that they've given up Judaism for leftism. And if that's the case, then you don't care about Israel. Or in fact, Israel may be the bad guy because you're more in line with, feeling the burn.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Remind everybody where they can find the Jewish Republican Alliance and the big show that's coming up that everybody needs to be at the Woodland Hills Marriott next week.
That's right. If you're in Southern California, 1 week from tonight, Wednesday night, March 11th, 7 p.m., Candace Owens being introduced by Larry Elder, the Sage. It's going to be at the Warner Center Marriott. You can look us up online, JewishRepublicanAlliance.org, or you can find us on Facebook, Jewish Republican Alliance, or even Twitter and Instagram, Jew Rep Alliance.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I've had both Candace and Larry on my show, Whiskey Politics, several times each. And, Candace Owens obviously, started Blexit. There is a Jexit. There is a Jexit, and everybody should check that out. For those folks that are listening to this that, wondering all about it, check out JewishRepublicanAlliance.org. Mitch and Bruce, both two great guys, co-founded this organization. They've got their roots now in Washington as well. And I had you both on the show. Everybody should check that out on Whiskey Politics on our YouTube channel. It's still very, very relevant. I'd like to think it's an evergreen interview because it's the same issues we talked about a year or so ago that exactly happening right now. So greatly appreciate you taking the time, Mitch, and looking forward to our lunch. Now it's on our calendar.
Yeah, it is. Great show. So glad to always be a part of it, Dave.
Always great having you, Mitch. And we'll be talking real soon. I'll see you later this month. And folks, everybody, once again, check out JewishRepublicanAlliance.org. And I will be right back here at Real Side Radio after the break. Don't go away, folks.